It is Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. This is the Minnesota Senate Education Finance Committee, and we will now come to order. Today we are going to hear updates on the READ Act from MDE, from teachers, from our district leaders, and from PELSB. This has been, I want to kind of say, almost life-changing, not only for teachers, but for students, as the READ Act aims to help all of our children read, and hopefully at their grade level by the end of their year, and it supports, especially what's important is the multilingual and our SPED students. I think, and somebody might want to correct me on this, but by my calculation, since April of 2024, more than $33 million has been allocated to the READ Act, with a $31.37 million additional going to teacher training. We've also provided $35 million to school districts in different ways to support that system. And those things include teacher training, curriculum changes, screening, professional development on evidence-based education instruction, and literacy incentive aid for the districts. And, you know, I think so far this year we've had superintendents and other school leaders remind us and tell us what a great change this is for our students and for our schools and for the teachers, and just really excited to get this update. A lot of the work here at the legislation, of course, came from Senator Mayquade. And before we have our testimonies, I'm going to ask her for a few words of wisdom here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I just want to thank, everybody who has had a role in the READ Act. It was a huge undertaking. It involved districts, it involved educators, it involved school boards and regional centers and MDE and the governor and lieutenant governor. And so, Madam Chair, it's $111 million we have put towards literacy in this state, which is, I mean, it really is the first of the kind in the nation. Lots of states have made this change to structured literacy, but none have matched it with the kind of resources that we have. And so we're going to see results. I mean, we are seeing results if you talk to educators in their classroom. If you talk to folks, kids are excited. They love to learn to read. And so we're going to hear from the department more in depth on the update, but I do want to just say about what we can expect looking forward. So we're going to continue to tweak this. This is something that we took on as a state, which means we're going to have to continue to tweak this as a state as we learn more information and as we encounter new deadlines. We're going to have to do those things. Things we're looking at for the READ Act 2025 this year is our literacy incentive aid formula. We're going to look at language immersion programs. There's been a working group about that. Not all languages are phonetic, and so making sure that students that are in language immersion programs are being assessed accurately, but also culturally responsively. Looking at teacher licensure to make sure that, as folks move from tier 2 to tier 3, that we have the appropriate training, but also that we're correctly accounting for people who've already gone to school and learned structured literacy, and that can show up in their portfolio, and then making sure that we have professional development options for districts and maybe looking at some more flexibility than the 3 that we have right now. So that's what's coming, and folks have been so incredible getting this off the ground, and as we hear testimony today, those things might be mentioned, and that's okay. This isn't a bill where we're saying, like, if you don't feel 100% about it, then I don't want to hear it. Like, that's how we're making this better, is when we hear the feedback and that constant feedback circle to make sure that we're doing things that benefit folks. So thank you, Madam Chair, and we can go on to the testifiers.
Thank you, Senator Mayquade. So we will start off with Assistant Commissioner Bobby Burnham from the Office of Teaching and Learning, and Mr. Adosh Uni, Director of Government Relations at the Minnesota Department of Education. You would just state your name for the record, and you may begin. Members, you also have your the packet that they will be presenting in your packet as well. So you may begin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Bobby Burnham, and I serve as the Assistant Commissioner for the Office of Teaching and Learning. Good morning, committee members. I'm honored to be here to share with you a brief update of all the implementation activities that have occurred to date with the READ Act. Of course, you know, we start with our 10 commitments to equity, of which I think learning to read hits on all 10 of those. So as Chair Kunish mentioned, the goal of the READ Act, it used to be in Read Well by third grade that children would read well by third grade. The READ Act really moves that target further into the system by ensuring that kids are reading well at grade level beginning in kindergarten, and that we're also serving the multilingual learners and students receiving special education intentionally as well, so they can achieve their individualized reading goals. So the slide deck that I have today is going to give you some year-by-year updates, but I wanted to start with just kind of setting expectations around the READ Act. As Senator Mayquay has mentioned, we have heard phenomenal stories from teachers around the state on the impact that the READ Act has. I just want to kind of set an expectation around MCA data. So as you all know, MCA data is data that shows how well a third grade student is meeting the academic standards. The READ Act, the main goal is to get kids reading at grade level using foundational reading skills. So the READ Act is going to get the kids ready to take that third grade MCA. And what this slide shows is kind of the timeline. If you think about kindergarten students in school right now, their teachers are being trained right now, so it's going to be the 28-29 school year before those kindergarten students get 3 full years of foundational instruction and reading skills. The best part about the READ Act is that we are collecting universal screening data beginning in kindergarten. And the READ Act requires that universal screening happen at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And beginning next summer with the submission of the local literacy plans, we will be collecting that universal screening data, and we'll be able to see the growth in classrooms from year to year. What this slide shows are the 5 key levers that the READ Act implements at the state level as well as the local level. So we are really prioritizing ensuring that teachers have the training and the coaching supports needed to teach foundational reading skills. So that's the science of reading or structured literacy in the classroom. I just talked about the student screening piece, which is going to be the first universal data set that we're collecting prior to that third grade MCA. We are also looking at structured literacy curriculum. We did a comprehensive curriculum review. We are entering into a comprehensive review of reading intervention programs. And the local literacy plans will be another data set that is going to provide the state multiple levels of valuable data on READ Act implementation. The next set of slides go through the activities in the implementation milestones and the key progress indicators that have been implemented at the state level and the local level to support READ Act implementation. So year 1 was July of 23 to last June. It seemed like that year is a complete blur for many of us at the state level. We did meet all of our legislatively mandated deadlines to get the READ Act off the ground and running by hiring staff, getting the regional literacy network set up, getting the screeners approved, getting the curriculum reviewed, and getting the local literacy plan template revised and out to districts. We are currently in year 2, and you can see by the green dots, the full green dot is that we have completed that activity, and the partially filled in dots are activities that we are currently working on. We continue training. We have, most districts have their literacy lead in place, and that requirement wasn't until August. The regional literacy network is fully staffed, And districts will submit that universal screening data this June. And MDE has analyzed last June's submission, and I have a little data on that later in the presentation. We are also tracking how districts are using their literacy incentive aid, and we are exploring convening a state literacy committee to serve as an advisory body to the state to help us ensure that we are making collaborative decisions with the stakeholders that it impacts. Year 3 is again continuing to get teachers trained. Phase 1 teachers will need to be trained by June 30th of next summer. Phase 2 teachers will need to be trained by June 30th of 2027. We continue the ongoing coaching and support through the regional literacy networks. We are formally evaluating the READ Act implementation efforts. Again, we'll convene that state literacy team, and each summer we will have, in partnership with Compass, a Compass Institute. And you can see what our milestones and progress measures will be. And then again, in year 4, most of the legislatively mandated READ Act activities will be coming to a close, knowing that we will continue to support districts on an ongoing effort with coaching and building capacity through the Regional Literacy Network, which is, has ongoing funding. So to date, the key progress indicators that we have accounted for so far is 100% of the districts are engaged in professional development by identifying their literacy district contact. 3,194 are trained as of June of 24. Remembering that as of January of 25, we have over 34,000 teachers currently registered to take the training. And the predominantly in the structured literacy curriculum area, the predominantly highly aligned curriculum that is widely used is the UFly, which is out of University of Florida. And the partially aligned curriculum that is widely used is Wonders. And then we have the local literacy plans. Local literacy plans were submitted last June. We got most of those in the first submission, and the remainder were submitted by the middle of November. A little data on the required training. Phase 1, as you remember, are pre-K classroom teachers, K3 classroom teachers, K-12 teachers licensed to teach English to multilingual learners, reading intervention teachers and special ed teachers, curriculum review, or staff who are charged with reviewing curriculum. And so all of those educators, we had one round of registration last August, and we just opened round 2 of phase 1 registration in January. We realized after the first round of registrations that we kind of had to narrow the field a little bit in this round 2 to prioritize mainly phase 1 teachers to ensure we could get them through the training by the required end date of June of 26. Phase 2, we had quite a few phase 2 teachers register in that initial round back in August. And again, phase 2 teachers will be needing to complete by July of 2027. We are starting to prepare to offer our para and volunteer training. This training is going to be provided through the regional literacy networks and facilitated by our regional literacy leads. And that para training will, I believe, be 2 modules for 4 hours each for a total of 8 hours of training. This slide gives you.
Dr. Berner?
Oh.
We have a question here.
Thank you,
Senator
Madam.
Farnsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the Phase 1 and the Phase 2, I have a question from one of my curriculum directors that's ready to start Phase 2, but she's saying that they can't start Phase 2 because that won't be funded. Is it possible, if they're done with all of the Phase 1 training, for them to start Phase 2 in order to get reimbursement for that, or is that something that we would have to do legislatively?
Assistant Commissioner.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So as I just mentioned, we had to prioritize Phase 1 teachers in this round 2 of registration. We know that there's a finite amount of money dedicated to the training, so we wanted to be sure that the Phase 1 teachers were trained. Phase 2 teachers have an additional year. The other factor we took into place with Phase 2 is teachers will be implementing the new ELA standards next year as well, so we didn't want to overburden Phase 2 teachers by having such big items to implement next school year. We anticipate Phase 2 beginning in the fall. Now, I have been contacted by a couple of districts who had already set their PD calendar for next year to be inclusive of Phase 2. And if that's the case in your district, I would ask you to have them reach out to us, because we definitely want to do everything we can to meet the needs of those districts who have already reserved time on their calendars to start Phase 2. We are going to have 2 new training options for Phase 2. 2 of the current trainers will not be offered for Phase 2 just simply because of the needs that need to be met for Phase 2 teachers. So those new options right now are being vetted and negotiated for statewide pricing. So we hope to get Phase 2 started sooner than later, but we wanted to be sure we gave ourselves some time to get the pieces in place to make sure it was implemented smoothly.
Follow-up?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just want to make sure that I'm clear so that I'm not passing incorrect information. So you're prioritizing Phase 1, which I did hear that, but it sounds like there's also the possibility, if they reach out to you separately, there is the possibility that they could start Phase 2, not lose the momentum that they've had, and receive reimbursement. Did I hear you correctly on that, that it's possible?
Assistant Commissioner.
Well, it's not a matter of reimbursing because the state contracts with the training vendors, so there's no exchange of money between your district and the vendor, it's between us. So it's a matter of getting the contracts in place with, if they choose one of the new vendors or go with one of the current ones. If their PD dates are already approved in next year's calendar, I would encourage them to reach out to us. Otherwise, we're really, really trying to prioritize getting Phase 1 teachers trained.
Follow-up?
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you. You can continue then.
Okay. So this next slide just gives you a visual of how many teachers have chosen the different of the 3 approved vendors. We have letters for administrators, letters for early childhood, and letters for K-3 for volume 1 and 2. And then you can see we have core, which is OLA, and carry-all. This next slide will give you an idea of how many grade levels and districts have chosen the highly aligned curriculum and those who have chosen the partially aligned curriculum. There is a re-review process going on for those publishers who submitted originally to be reviewed, did not make the highly aligned list, and are resubmitting to see if they, with their edits, make the highly aligned list. And those results will be out the first week of March. Intervention material. We are in the process of partnering with Carrie, who's facilitating the intervention review right now, and should have those interventions posted by mid-November. Just 25-26 school year, all schools will be required to use evidence-based interventions, hopefully within a multi-tiered systems of support. And then in fall of 26, begin reporting on interventions implemented. We have, as you know, actively been convening 2 work groups. One was the legislative work group for the READ Act, deaf, blind, and hard of hearing. That some legislative report should be submitted any day now. It's been reviewed and is in the final stages of being approved by our comms. And then internally with MDE, we have convened a cross-division work group that is focusing on multilingual learners and immersion programs. And so we have staff from multiple divisions, all who intersect with this work, and they will be convening focus groups that include district-level staff and leaders. And this group has just sent out a survey to districts with dual language programs. And once that survey data is collected, we'll provide some direction for what needs to be addressed in the districts supporting those programs. The Regional Literacy Network, you can see, as you know, each of the Minnesota Service Cooperatives houses a network. Each cooperative has a literacy lead and a team of coaches. And the purpose of the Regional Literacy Network is really to strengthen core instruction and create a sustainable, long-term systemic change towards structured literacy and evidence-based practices, and develop a network of literacy subject matter experts. Now, this is in close partnership with our COMPASS, our statewide improvement model. So we have our literacy teams working alongside our MTSS teams and our math teams, all within the COMPASS umbrella. So you can see it's a collaboration between MDE, the service cooperatives, and Carrie. The highlights so far for the regional literacy networks are all the leads and coaches have been trained to support facilitation of the approved professional development. In the long run, we see the regional literacy networks serving as the trainers for the ongoing need for training in the state, with those trained certified facilitators in each of the regional networks. We will be able to train new teachers, teachers moving into the state, teachers coming out of higher ed, or whatever the needs are. We won't need to contract with a training vendor for that services. We will offer that service through the Regional Literacy Network. So MDE and Carrie coordinated some focus groups consisting of school districts and public charter schools to really understand the experience of the READ Act implementation to date. And so far, 40% of the focus group convenings have been completed with over 100 participants. And these are a few of the findings from those convenings. Many groups found their connections with regional literacy networks to be highly valuable. They reported setting aside professional development time for coaching and processing of the approved learning, so that coaching and ongoing support is key to maintaining the momentum of the READ Act. Focus groups, particularly from smaller and rural districts, reported liking the curriculum review rubric resource and found it helpful to their curriculum review process. And then many focus groups respondents are delaying until the secondary, the 5 through 12 resources and information are released, such as the curriculum or screening tool selection. And then, of course, the focus groups identified the need for more funding and allocated time to support the work. So just quickly, a little bit about the READ Act evaluation. I know I'm getting close to time here. I won't go into detail on these slides, but I just want to you all to know that we do have a formal evaluation plan in place, and these next couple slides can highlight what we're focusing on, identifying where we're succeeding and where we need to improve, and using a continuous improvement approach to our evaluation. And for READ Act effects from the first year, nearly all submissions reference the READ Act required professional learning and review and/or adoption of the science of reading-based ELA curriculum. This is from our local literacy plan analysis. And many districts and charter schools are also in the process of reviewing current literacy practices to ensure they are supporting each student with evidence-based practices. Again, our qualitative analysis more on the local literacy plan, what went well, the data-driven decision, so really using that data, really thinking about this systemic strategic planning that the districts are doing, what needs to be refined, really supporting districts in seeing the connection to the Minnesota multi-tiered systems of support framework, and then a focus on reviewing practices for middle and high school. And then our key next steps are increasing use of data-driven decisions, increasing supports for teachers, and ensuring that the completion of the required training. You asked just a little bit of information on our proposed changes to the literacy incentive aid. So you can see on this slide, the current calculation was based on MCA third grade data. The proposed calculation revises the formula to be based on school poverty measures, percent of students directly certified to access free and reduced lunch. The current proposal is budget neutral. This next slide covers some pros and cons of this proposed change. We feel that by discontinuing the use of student assessment data is a practice that should not be continued, and to use poverty data, it's a more equitable resource distribution. It addresses broader learning needs, recognizes systemic challenges, and supports schools with the highest needs. And I think that's key, is supporting the schools and the students with the highest need, the highest percent of poverty, which typically are those schools that have the lowest rates of proficiency. This next slide just gives a preliminary high-level overview of the financial impact just from the cities, outer metro, other metro, non-metro, and greater Minnesota and charters. So there's the READ Act Literacy Incentive Aid and the READ Act Literacy Aid, which originally was the $35 million that was earmarked for the curriculum. That was just distributed in October of '24 as a formula-based allocation. And that, I believe, is all I have for you this morning.
Thank you extremely much for this really well laid out, very clear presentation. I can tell there's a lot of work went into this, a lot of review went into this, a lot of reflection went into this. As educators, we always know that we look at what we're going to do, we assess what we have on hand, what we're going to need, and then we're continually reevaluating the work that we're doing. So it's really evident in your presentation and obviously in the work that's happening at MDE. So thank you very, very much. Any questions or comments, members? Well, thank you both so much for showing up this morning and the work that you've done on this. And we will continue to reach out to you with our needs and our suggestions and the work that we do together. Thank you. So next on our agenda, we have educators coming in. We have Sarah Peterson, who is the literacy coordinator at the Shakopee Public Schools. Is she here? If you want to join us. Then we'll have Marty Fridgen, an elementary music specialist at Southwest Washington County Schools. And then Dr. Justin Killian from Education Issues. He is an education issue specialist with Education Minnesota. Ms. Pearson, if you would introduce yourself for the record, and you may begin.
All right. Good morning, Chair Kunish and committee members. My name is Sarah Peterson, and I am the K-12 Literacy Coordinator and Literacy Lead for Shakopee Public Schools. This morning, I want to focus specifically on the professional development aspect of the READ Act, sharing our successes and our future needs. Shakopee Schools selected CORE's Online Literacy and Language Academy to fulfill the requirements of the READ Act. We have 3 cohorts that have currently completed training, and the remainder of our staff begins next month. Our instructional coaches, alongside our elementary principals, have also engaged in the training, allowing us to build a shared understanding of effective literacy practices and strengthen teacher support. Our educators who have completed the training are grateful to have received high-quality professional development that has a direct application to the work they do each and every day with students. Teachers frequently report that their college preparation courses rarely provided in-depth learning around foundational skills instruction, and as a result of the READ Act training, feel better equipped to meet the needs of students who need explicit instruction in learning to read. Our goal is to deliver consistent, evidence-based instruction to all of our students. We know that professional development is most effective when paired with support from an instructional coach. I've had the privilege to come alongside an English language development teacher, helping her see the importance of continuing her work with oral language development and embedding explicit instruction in foundational skills in order to best support her students' overall literacy development. This is but one example of the impact of teacher and coach collaboration. The READ Act training has also had an impact on systems already in place in our district. Last year, we rolled out a robust assessment plan as part of our MTSS framework. This included screeners, FastBridge screeners for all of our students in kindergarten through 5th grade, a data dive protocol, targeted evidence-based interventions, and monitoring and adjustment of student progress. Our teachers who had completed the training were able to connect the dots between theory from the coursework and direct application to their work with students. For educators who will be taking the training, this rollout has been an opportunity for us to front-load their learning. Most importantly, we see an increase in the clarity and consistency for educators as they work to support students with varied reading needs. As one teacher aptly pointed out, in the past, we've collected data and it ended there. Now I am actually doing something with it. In addition, the READ Act training has also supported the work of our upcoming ELA curricular resource implementation. Our articulation team members who will select our new resources have been able to lean into the training they received as we evaluate and pilot potential resources. Our pilot teams are making connections between their coursework and the resources. They have a deeper understanding not only of what they are teaching, but why they are teaching it. While we are excited by the initial benefits of the READ Act training, we continue to plan forward. As we look to the implementation of a foundational skills resource next year, we are working to support our teachers as they bridge their learning from their coursework to their classrooms. High levels of support through coaching, collaborative PLCs, and ongoing professional development are practices we will leverage to sustain teacher growth and ultimately improve student outcomes. In addition, we are working to create a plan to support new hires in acquiring the required training. We are eagerly awaiting the options for screening our 4th through 12th grade students, as well as options for training our secondary teachers, and hope for additional clarity around how we define teachers responsible for reading instruction at the secondary level. As I close today, I want to acknowledge how proud I am and grateful for the hard work and determination of our teachers, right, as they enact the components of the READ Act. I strongly believe that continued funding for the READ Act is essential for ensuring that every child becomes a proficient reader and experiences academic success. I respectfully ask for your ongoing support of this vital legislation and for continued investment in the future of our students. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Peterson. You can tell you're a literacy expert in the way you present. Senator McQuaid, do you have a question or comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you so much for coming. I always like to use knowledge when people are right in front of me. Can you tell me, if you were going to write the statute on defining teachers responsible for reading instruction, how would you want that defined, or what would make the most sense in your district?
Good question. Go ahead.
Chair Kunish, Senator Quaid.
Mayquaid.
Mayquaid, thank you. That is an excellent question. I firmly believe that we all teach literacy at some level, right? If I'm thinking about secondary social studies, secondary history classes, secondary science classes, even math, there is an element of literacy, whether it's reading or writing, that is included in those content areas. And so interdisciplinary literacy is very important, and I believe it would be really important for our 6-12 teachers to have an understanding of how we help students access text. Not necessarily how we teach kids how to decode and lift words off of a page, but that whole idea of accessing text. What are the strategies that I need to use? How can I support my students in reading what's in front of them?
Excellent, excellent, thank you.
No.
Senator, follow up?
So, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, thank you.
No worries.
I really appreciate that, and I think as we explore options for flexibility for professional development, I think this might be the place where that comes in. I'm always asking districts when I have the opportunity, how is the funding and the pace currently for your district?
Ms. Peterson?
Thank you, Chair Kunish and Senator Mayquaid. The pace right now is going really well. We were fortunate enough to be able to offer multiple options for teachers to engage in the training. And so we had 2 full cohorts, and as a matter of fact, had to close registrations for what we called our early track. They started in August, and they just wrapped up in this past December. Our next cohort start in March. We have 4 cohorts of teachers that decided to take the March through this June training. And then we have 2 smaller cohorts that decided to extend that training over a year. So we feel that we've been really able to respond to the different needs and varying priorities that we have going on in our district, right? That choice, I believe, was critical for our teachers to have. In terms of funding, we are able to provide our teachers professional development time to complete the training. However, if they choose to complete the training outside of their contract day, those professional development days become flex time for them. In addition, upon successful completion, our teachers are awarded a stipend of $750.
Nice. Senator Swedzinski?
Good to see you. Listening to you and the Assistant Commissioner this morning, and having taught for over 30 years, I was trying to think if I ever once had any training in how to help kids reading the textbooks and the handouts. And I can safely admit that where I got my teaching license, there was nothing ever. And then this might date us, but I remember SQ3R.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and I think we had an hour maybe during fall workshop on SQ3R, and then that's it. And so I just think, as Senator McQuaid did in her remarks, all the players involved in this process. But I guess my question this morning for anybody that comes to testify, and I know the science of teaching, is vital in teaching reading, but is there any work in the READ Act on the art of teaching? you know, and the joy to read. And I know with the science of reading, you will become joyful in reading, but unless you have that gift as a teacher to trick the kids into learning the science of reading. So is there any, in all the READ Act, is there any little subtle place where we're subliminally teaching kids, that teachers are learning the art of teaching / reading as well as the science and so on? It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Ms. Peterson?
Chair Kunish, Senator Swedzinski, good to see you as well. I'm a fellow Eden Prairie resident, so. You bring up a great question and an amazing, a wonderful point, right? Learning and learning to read in particular should be joyful. It should be fun. Kids should be eager to come into their classrooms and pick up books and read, whether they're kindergartners or our seniors about to graduate. And so to that point, that idea of motivation and relevance to reading is something we can't ignore, right? We need to make sure that we are putting text in front of students where they see themselves, that they have a personal connection to, that really sparks their curiosity and their ingenuity. In terms of teaching kids to read and that art of reading versus that science of reading, we have that science of reading side, right? We know the research, we know the explicit foundational skills that students need. We know that they need foundational work also as they learn to read fluently, as they develop vocabulary, and as they comprehend and interact with texts. We have to couple that with the art of teaching, knowing our students, who's in front of us, how are we best going to support them. We also need to be thinking about, as I said previously, their motivation levels. As I'm coaching, part of my work is to help teachers take the science, take that learning, and apply that in their classroom. And that's where that art of teaching comes into play. We need to hold true to those effective principles, yet we also need to hold true to those students that are in front of us.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Peterson. Appreciate all the work that
Thank
you've
you.
done, and obviously you take all of this very much to heart. Thank you. We do have Marty Fridgen. He is joining us online. If you would like to turn your camera on and, excuse me, introduce yourself to the committee, and you may begin.
Well, good morning. Sorry about this. Well, although I'm not sorry about the sun coming through, it feels good. But good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Marty Fridgen. I'm from District 833, South Washington County. I'm an elementary music specialist on release time to serve as the president of our teacher union, the United Teachers of South Washington County. And first, I do want to say that the READ Act is good work. It is important work. It's important for our students to become readers, and it's the right work to do. However, as with many things, there are challenges. In South Washington County, we might be a little bit unique, I'm not sure, but our district is requiring all of the teachers to be trained. So whether you're a classroom teacher, music teacher, high school chemistry teacher, we are all being trained. And it can be a little challenging when we're not all of us traditional classroom teachers. I think we're also unique in that we're using two different of the trainings. So our secondary teachers are being trained on OLA or CORE, and our elementary are using Carry-All. And as president of our union, of course, you can imagine we have over 1,400 teachers in our district. I hear from many members every day. And so far, I have not heard, we started in August, not many major issues with CORE getting the resources they need or the time they need to get the work done during our professional development days that we, of course, scheduled in when we knew this was coming. On the other hand, it's been a little more challenging for Carry-All. I am also taking Carry-All, again, alongside my elementary colleagues. And one of the unfortunate things was when we started Carry-All, we had no resources. So like OLA, they had the resources already available to them. With Carry-All, and I borrowed these, there's a morphology flip chart that's extremely important for the training. And then there's a huge binder, resource binder. Well, we did not get those until November, so we were almost halfway through, which made it extremely difficult and frustrating, and more time people had to try to make copies or share, if one of them even had one. So that was very difficult, and of course, again, with the time consuming, we already know there's not enough time in the day for our staff and teachers, and so to add that was a huge burden. And I'm sorry to report that we are on module 5 this week of 8, and we still have teachers that don't have those resources. So I don't know where the holdup is or what's going on, if it's a financial thing or what, but that's been extremely frustrating. When you get these resources in front of you, the training is so much easier to do, and this is very intense training. The other thing I just wanted to point out too is that when we put our district calendar together, we had been told by the U of M that carry-out would be about 48 hours. It has come to light, and it is now about 67 hours. So we do not have enough time scheduled in our calendar year, school year, for PD days to get this training done for our elementary folks. And I believe strongly that if they're doing time outside of the duty day, that they should be paid reasonably to get this stuff done. And so that's also, or to be given more days to do this, more PD days. And so that's been a frustrating part of it too, is that we tried to plan really well, and then because of these issues, we haven't been able to do that. And so though our teachers have already started using some, of course, of what they're learning in their classroom and everything, that is what I hear the most from is our elementary folks who are just, it's just hard when you don't have the resources in front of you and you don't have the time that you were told you were gonna have. And so I would just like to kind of end with also, which you probably all know, that we do need funding as well, because we know we're going to have teachers new to teaching coming to our district next year. But we're also going to have teachers that maybe came from a different district that did not do their READ Act training yet. We know we're going to have people coming back from unpaid leaves that haven't had the training yet. We know we're going to have people coming back from medical leaves that don't have the training yet. And so we're going to need funding and or time to make sure we can get those folks trained. And I know some districts maybe use substitutes to help with that. In a district our size, it's really not realistic because we already have trouble filling our sub positions from day to day. So in summary, I just want to again, state how important this work is, that we're doing our best to navigate it while we're doing our daily, teaching duties. But we are going to need more time during the school year and funding to really do this well and make sure our teachers are being compensated for the outside work they're doing. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining us this morning. Senator Gustafson, you have a question or a comment?
I do. Thank you, Madam Chair. So to the testifier, Ms. Frigin, this is, one, I want to just say thank you for bringing up the logistical issues, especially for in-school year training. I think that those are important things that I've been hearing in my district too. And side note, and I hope you'll just indulge me all for a minute or two, I am fairly certain that we played basketball together in high school and your mom was my first grade teacher. And so I just want to give a shout out to Sartell, Minnesota, and just say that Marty Frigin comes from a long line of educators, clearly doing your job really, really well. And it goes to show us that we sit on this Ed Finance Committee that sometimes we have those full circle moments. So I remember my first grade teacher, it was your mom, and I really appreciate what you brought to the committee today for testifying. So thank you for letting me have that moment in time.
Senator Mayquade.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Ms. Frigin, thank you so much for coming and testifying and bringing those specifics. There is nobody who has done more for the READ Act than teachers. They are the ones who have to take the training and apply this knowledge and do observations and report back. And we already ask them so much, and we're asking them a lot more. And so I just want to both acknowledge that you came and gave really, really helpful specifics, because that doesn't always filter up, right? I'm not taking the training every day. So I appreciate that. And I think this might not be the first time today. We might hear some other issues with carry-all or with carry itself, and so I just want to name that too. But I really, really want to thank you and thank the educators who are taking on the brunt of this and have done so like everything else we ask teachers to do, like gung-ho and ready. And so I want to say that because, you know, this has been a collaborative effort, absolutely, but teachers are the ones who have had to do all of this. And we're so, so grateful to you for doing it because, you know, it's easy to make a law. It's hard to do it. And you are the ones who are doing it. Thank you.
Another question? No? Yeah, thank you. And I see that you are a music specialist, so the fact that, you know, you recognize the importance of literacy within your own speciality is really unique. Thank you very much. Next, we have Dr. Justin Killian from Education Minnesota.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members of the committee. My name is Dr. Killian, and on behalf of the 86,000 educators, both licensed and unlicensed of Education Minnesota, it's my pleasure to come talk to you about READ Act implementation today. For the last 3 years, I've spent a significant amount of my career working on READ Act implementation all over the state, and I've had the unique pleasure of talking to teachers in every corner as this thing has started to roll out. So I'm going to try to give the most comprehensive perspective I can in my short amount of time. I would like to start with a few thank yous. And I want to make sure that people realize that this isn't window dressing and this isn't some kind of a cliche statement. Representative Edelson and former Representative Edelson and Senator May Quaid, in the building of the coalition of people that have put this whole effort together, we have really worked together very collaboratively. So I just want to thank the Commissioner Burnham and the State Literacy Director, Julie Novak. I want to thank Masa and Dr. Deb Hinton. I want to thank the parent advocates because all along you've been very helpful to my members and we've been able to troubleshoot some really complicated problems together. So as far as implementation is concerned and the perspective that I'm hearing every day from members, I would like to start by just contextualizing things. There is a lot of emotion, there is a lot of exhaustion, and there is a lot of stress that's around all of this. And when we're tired and when we're stressed out, we're not always at our best selves. It's come to light that teachers currently are the #1 most burnt out profession in the United States of America. And we lose one teacher in their, 1 out of every 5 teachers we lose in the first 3 to 5 years of their time with us. This is because of workload. This is because of all kinds of, you know, factors outside of their control, outside of their administrator's control that is coming down on them. But we're implementing this drastic change to how we teach literacy at the time all of that is happening. So a lot of the, you know, emotion and stress that we hear from teachers comes through that context. It's also really emotional to change a paradigm as an educator, right? You went to school, you learned a specific way to teach, you've maybe been doing it for 10 to 15 years, and then someone comes along and says, hey, what you're doing is wrong. Maybe we should switch this up. No one did anything wrong. They were doing exactly what they were trained to do, but that is still a hard thing to hear, and it creates a little bit of angst. So the things that I would just bring to your attention, time remains an issue across the state. It's a very quick turnaround. Teachers get sick, teachers have babies, teachers need to take time off just like anyone else. And we really should think about the implementation time. My colleague from Shakopee here talked a little bit about their model. The other thing that I would bring out is there's a new stress across the state of Minnesota about the assessments built within the trainings. I don't know where this came from, and I don't place blame on any single person. I think that communication gets messy and we all start playing telephone, but there are a lot of people, and I was on the phone last night with a local president late at night, who his members are actually terrified they're going to lose their teaching licenses if they don't get an 80% on their first attempt at the letters assessment. And you can talk to anybody at MDE or anybody in higher ed that has taken these trainings and that has worked through these trainings. Those assessments aren't high-stakes gotcha exams. They're meant to be learning tools to help the teachers, and they're supposed to be able to go back and relearn things and retry things if they don't do so great on the assessment. And I don't know where that rumor has come from, but I just want to acknowledge that rumor is real, and it's creating and adding to the stress. I also would ask that you keep special ed teachers in mind. They are already drowning in paperwork, and this is a really big lift for them especially. And then the last thing I would point out is last year this body allocated $31.3 million to pay teachers for their time. And we tried all kinds of ways to figure out how to administer that and decided the best way was to have it negotiated at the local level. There have been some tremendous MOUs that I have helped locals come reach with their districts on how to get this done. Badger Public Schools is paying teachers about $1,700 for their time, and they're embedding a lot of the work already within their contract day. Fridley Public Schools, $600 stipends plus lane changes, and also embedding it within their workday as is. And Mankato Public Schools is paying $4,000 stipends for letters training. That is a tremendous thank you to the teachers that are doing this work. I could go on and on listing districts that have been really great, but we still have a fair amount of districts that haven't come to an agreement with their teachers on how to spend their portion of the $31.3 million. And I would just encourage us all to remember the stress and the context, and remember, even though districts are experiencing extreme budget cuts right now, and no one would deny that, the money this body allocated last year was to recognize the stress teachers are under and to help them with this implementation. And the quicker that we can get to some agreements and get things finalized, the better morale will be across the state. That is primarily the things that I hear on a daily basis, but I talk to anywhere from 10 to 20 teachers a day about READ Act stuff, and so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Senator Clark.
Thank you, Chair Kunish. Thank you, presenter. I just want to double click on the SPED teacher piece. I'm hearing the same, and I think we should be cognizant of the stress that this and other expectations. We expect big things, as Senator Makeway said, and we should, and this is one more piece. And so as we can find more ways to intentionally support, especially our special education teachers, that's what I'm hearing both in Minneapolis and outstate, really the critical point. Let's find ways to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm always just going to take the opportunity because, you know, we have our meetings every 3 weeks, but why not take time in between that to ask specific questions? Is there a legislative way to help finalize these MOUs?
Mr. Killian.
Is there a legislative, Madam Chair, Senator McQuaid, is there a legislative way? I think just like a reminder of why this money was allocated and that the money was allocated specifically for compensation and that it shouldn't be spent unless there's an agreement between the teachers and the district would be extremely helpful. I think there's still confusion about that in some corners of the state, about what the intent of the money was. And so anything this body can do to clarify that intent would be tremendously helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And so I'll just say, the money was specifically allocated to pay teachers for their time for this training. In particular, because teachers already do a lot of unpaid work. And so even if a district found a way to fit all of the training into PD days, this is still a tremendous amount of work that teachers are doing. So that is the only thing legally that the money can be used for. That is what is written in statute. So I will issue that reminder. I also want to say that nothing about the READ Act, and this is for everybody, I know you know this, nothing about the READ Act is meant to be punitive. Nobody is losing a teaching license. Nobody's losing funding to their districts, right? This is meant to create a strong partnership with timelines to meet. We can work with those. Nobody's getting punished for not meeting a timeline. Not one district in this state is acting with ill intent or a desire to evade the READ Act requirements. there is no punishment that is coming from this body or anywhere else in the state for not being perfect and meeting all the requirements on time. So, you know, I just want people to know that and to really take that in. Are there things that we can do in READ Act 2025 to alleviate that stress? I mean, we could certainly make the timelines longer, right? I mean, we all know that. It delays the amount of time that we see results. That's the balance we're always working with. But if that is something that's desired, we can do that. I don't think there would be any resistance to finding the sweet spot of, you know, a steady pace, but reasonable for people to undergo and for us to make that change. And then the third thing I want to say too is this is a paradigm shift for a lot of people. I represent previously the largest balanced literacy district in the state of Minnesota. And so where I went to school, the people that live in my district, my educators, the parents, this was like a total paradigm shift in my district. And this was nobody's fault except the high up researchers who lied for a long time. That is not the teacher's fault. That's not even higher ed's fault. And it's certainly not the teacher's fault. So I want everybody to know that because we know better, we're doing better. And the whole goal is to provide the support necessary to move us in this way. Nobody's getting punished. And we definitely want to make sure teachers are getting paid. And so I appreciate you bringing that in. And if you would be willing, you did say an anecdote in our last meeting about people going in and then people coming out and the things you're hearing. Would you mind sharing that here?
Mr.
Chair,
Quinlan.
Chair,
Sure.
Senator McQuaid, just so I clarify the question, people going into the training, like the grumpy people, and then on the back end? Yeah, so, you know, teachers are quick to call their union when they're grumpy. And so I've dealt with some grumpy teachers, whether you believe it or not, about the READ Act. You're really, Justin, why am I doing this? And then on the back end of it, I have yet to hear a teacher say, well, that was a waste of time. In fact, I heard a story recently about a physical education teacher. I think he was middle school, but he maybe was elementary, and he was pretty grumpy about having to do it. And after he got through core training, at the end of it, he was like, "Oh my God, think of all the ways I can embed literacy in gym class," right? So the stories coming out of this are tremendous, and teachers are really loving what they're learning, and they just, I think, at the end of the day, would love a little time to get back to the art of teaching, as Senator Swedzinski was thinking, and think about like, okay, I am the music teacher. How can I embed this? You know, how can I do this? But it is sparking joy in a lot of people.
Thank you for that positive note, Dr. Killian. Senator Swedzinski, you had a comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Killian, what you just said was, I think for all the legislators, all 201 of us, music to our ears, that something we did here created joy in people, and that no one has said this is a waste of my time, no matter how they went about it. And now I forgot what I wanted to ask when I drew, because that last comment just kind of was so wonderful. And so I have to apologize. Oh, no, God. I wish you hadn't said that, because it was nice to hear, and I appreciate that. Now I forgot what I wanted to say, so if I think of...
Thanks so much. Thank you both for being here today and for the work that, excuse me, Senator Farnsworth.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and this has nothing to do with the READ Act, but I've heard a couple of people talk about our special ed teachers that need some relief, and I do have a bill being drafted that would remove some of the state
Senator
requirements.
Farnsworth, sorry. I know this is uncool, but that's what I want to ask, is exactly what you're asking now, so thank you.
So I have this bill being drafted. It would change some of the state requirements to match federal requirements, and so with Education Minnesota here, I hope that we can get your support to help our special education teachers. Two pretty small changes that I think would make a huge difference for our special ed teachers. So I just wanted to put that plug in. I'm waiting for it from the revisor's office.
Thanks for looking out for special ed students. And Senator Swedzinski, maybe you want to work with him on that. All right, we are going to move along because we have 4 more presenters, testifiers, and then a presentation. So thank you very much for those that have shared their interest and their experience in the READ Act this morning. Next, we have Shannon Anderson. She is the chair of the Hopkins School Board. Craig Anderson, Executive Director of Teaching and Learning for St. Paul Public Schools. David Law, Superintendent. Amy, we'll wait for that group until we have these two. All right, Ms. Anderson, if you would like to just introduce yourself for the record, and you may begin.
My name is actually Kimberly Smith. Shannon Andreessen couldn't be here this morning. Good morning, Chair Kunish and committee members. My name is Kimberly Smith, and I serve as the literacy lead in Hopkins Public Schools. Today, I'm honored to represent not only the Hopkins School District, but also the Hopkins Legislative Action Coalition and over 130 literacy leads from across our state. I'm here because we share a really powerful goal, ensuring that all students read at or above grade level. The READ Act is an essential step toward that vision, but as we work to make that goal a reality, we need to reflect on how we can improve its implementation to serve our students and our educators. Before we dive into the details, I ask you to consider one simple question with every line of the READ Act. Will this change literacy outcomes for students? The success of this initiative hinges on our ability to make meaningful change in the classroom. It's not enough to pass legislation. We must ensure it leads to tangible improvements in student reading outcomes. While progress is happening, it's important to remember that true change takes time. It's often said in schools that what gets tested gets taught, and the same applies to legislation. What gets mandated gets attention. Districts appreciate the focus of the READ Act, as we all value improved literacy outcomes. In Hopkins, we've been focused on improving literacy by developing teacher efficacy since 2019. We then introduced letters training to our teachers, helping them develop the deep knowledge needed to support our learners. Our early data shows that K-2 students who were taught by a letters-trained teacher are far more likely to score low risk or meets target on a benchmark screeners than compared to non-letters classrooms. We're seeing success, but we need continued support to sustain this momentum. Nearly 300 teachers in Hopkins have completed or are in the process of completing letters training, which is significant investment of time and resources. To bridge the gap between training and classroom implementation, we've opted to use internal facilitators who also serve as instructional coaches. This helps connect the dots between theory and practice. However, our district receives no state compensation for their facilitation despite saving the state money. With increased budget cuts, we're at risk of losing this critical support and necessitating a possible switch to online sessions with national facilitators. READ Act 2.0, while well-intentioned, asks these facilitators to undergo additional monthly trainings on top of the extra training they already do to maintain their certification. This creates unnecessary burden given their experience. It also financially strains already stretched resources by requiring monthly subs for numerous staff and leaves students without their teachers. To truly achieve the vision of the READ Act, we need to ensure that every teacher has the right tools to succeed. These are the core needs that must be addressed. Knowledgeable teachers. We need knowledgeable teachers who can identify student needs, which is happening in elementary and now in targeted reading roles. However, phase two stops way too short. Reading and writing are not confined to English language arts teachers alone. Educators across 412 need to be trained in literacy. Research supports this holistic approach, which is why we advocate for including any classroom teacher that's connected to literacy training. Teachers need more than just knowledge of reading science. They need to be equipped and have support in implementing high-quality curriculum effectively. That's how we make sure they can meet the needs of all students. We need strong MTSS systems with highly trained interventionists who can support struggling students in real time and prevent gaps from widening. These experts should work with our most struggling students, including those with dyslexia, and provide intensive support. Paraprofessionals, though amazing, have less expertise, higher turnover, fewer targeted PD opportunities, and limited training in language-based challenges. And training is just the beginning. Ongoing school-based coaching and support are essential to sustain any new practice. Research shows that without these supports, any new teaching method will fail to take root. Yet budget cuts threaten to eliminate these positions, jeopardizing the success of the READ Act. Unfunded mandates and rising costs are forcing districts to cut indirect positions, undermining our success. The legislation must secure long-term funding for site-based coaching and implementation support, starting with elementary schools and eventually extending to secondary schools after completing PD. These are the building blocks of success for our students and for the READ Act's long-term effectiveness. As you consider changes to the READ Act legislation, I'd like to highlight the top identified need by literacy leads across our state. We're working in an environment of shifting expectations. Changing deadlines and reallocation of funds often makes it hard for districts to plan effectively. For example, the sudden delay in Phase 2 PD options by MDE this winter has created real challenges as many districts had already planned their 25-26 calendars. Proposed changes are unclear. For example, a $1 million contract is proposed for culturally responsive learning materials. What will districts receive from this? How will it fit within the adopted resources and be aligned to standards? How do we know what to not devote time to because it's coming and funded at the state level? To prevent these uncertainties and disruptions, we need stable, predictable funding, details, and timelines. Schools need to know what resources they will have and when they will have them so they can plan accordingly. Timely material releases that align with school planning and purchasing is also critical for implementation success. Approval of interventions in November is too late for them to be implemented that year. Districts need to plan for the approved materials, budget for ordering costs, submit the orders, identify how training will happen, and then find time to schedule that training. Over the initial Phase 1, PD has been amazing, and teachers are incredibly grateful for the investment and knowledge they're gaining. They feel more empowered to know what to do to help students who are struggling to learn to read. However, the current PD system also presents significant challenges. If a district can't meet the minimum number of participants to schedule a cohort, it has to rely on national facilitation dates that often occur outside of contract hours. These conflicts lead to union grievances that can result in delays of years, preventing teachers from receiving the training they need and want. As districts complete the bulk of Phase 1 training, we ask that the responsibility for Phase 1 PD shift to state colleges and regional co-ops. Ideally, this shift needs to be supported by a system that tracks PD completion through the licensing board, allowing districts to identify candidates who have completed their training and track those who need additional support as they move into Phase 1 or Phase 2 roles. Finally, Minnesota's strength lies in its commitment to valuing multilingualism. However, the READ Act currently creates unintended barriers for immersion programs. Students in K-2 receiving 80% or more of their instruction in a partner language are being tested in English, leading to irrelevant data and wasted instructional time. Additionally, testing both in the partner language and English doubles the burden on students and staff. For example, in kindergarten, the required subtests take about 10 to 15 minutes per student. Working within a literacy block, this takes approximately 2 weeks to complete. For immersion student, that doubles to a month of lost literacy block time due to assessments. We propose creating a section in the local literacy plan specifically for immersion programs. This would allow schools to clearly outline their balanced assessment systems and ensure that dyslexia is identified appropriately without causing unnecessary confusion or disruption for families. A subgroup of immersion representatives could share out and help identify areas of strength and need. In closing, Minnesota teachers, leaders, and literacy leads are passionate about the success of our students. To meet the goals of the READ Act, the majority of funding must go directly to schools for student services and implementation support. The current funding model does not provide ongoing support needed for meaningful long-term change. We ask for stability, timely resources, and a system that values the expertise of those on the ground. I'm happy to answer any questions and provide any further details. Together, we can ensure that the READ Act fulfills its promise to improve literacy outcomes for every student in Minnesota. Thank you.
Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You had said something about state PD and regional co-ops. Can you just go back and read that again? Or you can give me your testimony too. I will take all of it. That works too. But if you wanted to just bring it to me at the end, I'll take that under advisement. I really appreciate all your comments.
Anyone else? All right, thank you very much for subbing in for Shannon. And next we have Mr. Anderson. If you'd like to introduce yourself and you may begin.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I'm here to tell a little bit about the St. Paul Public Schools journey to implementation of the READ Act and to say thank you. Our students have one shot at K-12 education, and learning how to read is an essential part of that. And we too were a balanced literacy district that had listened to the experts for years and years and years. This is my 30th year in the St. Paul Public Schools, and we did a lot of things that undermined the ability for kids to learn how to read. When we saw that we could do better, we did better. And we've been leaning into the science of reading and structured literacy and the ability to make change in the space between the teacher and the child, which is the only thing that'll actually affect the outcomes for kids. And so currently there are 1,361 St. Paul Public School teachers who are working on their carry-all professional learning in the school year 24-25. Those teachers still teach all day, and they still do their special education paperwork, and they still have staff meetings, and they still meet the needs of our kids in math and science and all the other curricular areas as well. On top of that, they're spending about 50 plus hours learning about the science of reading. And as we've heard here today, we are having a similar experience with this is the best information. And it's too much, and it's a lot, and I want to make change in my classroom. So it's thank you. Thank you for partnering with us in getting this to us. What makes this possible is the organization from MDE and from our partners at the U and Cary, in that the contracting is not an easy thing to do, and there's many folks who are out there trying to get as many dollars as they possibly can, especially from big systems like the St. Paul Public Schools. And so to have the registration and the organization and all of those pieces just taken care of for us has been delightful. And it's the reason that there's 1,300 teachers in a training in one single year, organized in a really highly organized and professional way. So thank you to Cary, and thank you to MDE, frankly. The funding to pay teachers is to do this work outside the school day has been instrumental. You've heard that it's not enough, and we would tend to agree with that, because learning is personal and local and immediate, and sometimes we say things are going to take 2 hours, and we get really interested in a component of it, or it's so ground shaking that we need to spend extra time on that. And so the hours spent don't always equal the hours you put on your time card, and so that is something to consider, and we appreciate the dollars, and we've enjoyed being able to pay them to teachers as they work to completion of their carry-all certification. The thing about that is, this is all theory, and we need to shift it from theory to practice. And so there's this ongoing need. You don't just arrive one day with the professional learning and now I know exactly what to do. There's the curricular pieces, and then learning how to use the curricular pieces, and then how do we replicate the most effective practices across all of the classrooms to have that joy sparked, and to see the results, because celebrating the actual learning that happens between a kid and a child is the best part about being a teacher. And then sharing that also with their families. I've appreciated the partnering and accountability between the state and the school district to work with the teachers union, and then it's kind of a stool of accountability that's happening for us. This is required, and these are our choices, and we get to make them together, and it's going to be good for students, and we get paid some. So that has been amazing for making this happen so quickly. Ongoing, that we need the same strong partnership. When we start to fracture and go all different directions, it makes it really challenging to know what the best direction is, because then there's a ton of critique about, well, you went this way, and you should have gone that way, and boy, if you would have just done it like so and so and so and such, we'd have a better system, and we'd have better outcomes. But I appreciate this piece of it. The accountability also, to me, is like what is monitored and measured and made public is what gets done in society. And so the pieces of the local literacy plan where we are spending 3 times a year doing those screenings and then having to have the conversations with families about how their students are doing, and then actually having to share what our plan is for success, almost down to the individual child for teachers, has been exceptional, and we want to keep improving that system. And so the final thing I'll say is my only wish is that the candidates came to us and applied to be teachers in our district, and they were already ready to go with the science of reading. And there was a robust higher ed partnership in having them ready and taking that, I don't want to say taking that burden off, but planning ahead to be prepared to do the job at hand, which is teaching way more kids how to read than we do right now. And there is a scientific way to do that. So thank you. And I'll just finally put in a little plug for our literacy journey in St. Paul. I think you'll get a QR code in the packet, but there's a documentary that has been created where the St. Paul Public Schools community is all in using the leverage of the moment to change the outcomes for kids and level the playing field.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I was going to ask you about that documentary. Appreciate St. Paul Public Schools' really positive approach to all of this and the support that you're giving your teachers. Members, you did receive the QR code in your emails, so when you have a moment, it'd be great if you would just review that QR code. And then perhaps, is there another way the audience or people who are listening might be able to actually see that as well?
Google SPPS all in, and it'll pop up.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions or comments? Thanks so much, and thanks to all those teachers out there that are working long and hard to adjust to this new way of teaching literacy. We know that it's not easy. We know that especially in some of the specialty areas such as special ed or dual English speakers, this is not an easy way to change, but we're working hard and we're working in the best way that we can to make sure that our schools have the resources, our students have the resources, our teachers have the resources, and appreciate the partnership of all of you that are doing this work. Next, we have Superintendent David Law and Assistant Superintendent Amy Ledoux from the Minnetonka Public Schools. And there's a third person, would it be Gina? Gina Morgan, who is the interim superintendent from Spring Grove Public Schools. So if you would like to introduce yourself and begin.
Good morning, Senator Kunish, members of the committee. Thank you for having us here. It's good to see so many friendly faces coming back. I'm actually going to turn over to a literacy expert to talk about implementation, but I want to start with, as a superintendent, we look at the big picture. And just as the finance committee, I'm going to run some numbers with you for you. Yesterday, I asked our finance department to pull the amount of funds we've received recently on a variety of things that were passed in 2023. For literacy incentive aid in Minnetonka, we weren't given new funds, we were asked to shift funds. And so in our district, we pulled resources from student intervention to support the implementation of the READ Act. We received in the last 3 years $757,000, $685,000, and $757,000. Not in new money, but that's our allocation that we were spent on implementation of the READ Act. In new money, we received $450,000 in one-time funds to work on the training that we have already negotiated with our teachers. We train our teachers during the day, and we're paying a stipend of about $600 as they go through the assessment cycle. Now, for perspective, during the same time, Our summer unemployment was just about $700,000, $655,000 last year, and $526,000 the year before. Our typical meal reimbursements were in FY23, $119,000, and FY24, just over $4.5 million. So looking forward over the next 10 years, as a superintendent tries to balance out a budget, we'll spend $45 million in new funds on lunch and no new money coming to us to support the READ Act as of today. So $450,000 in one-time funds to support arguably the most important thing we do as a school system in reading, and $45 million to support meals. As you've heard me talk before, you get what you pay for. Our priority would be learning, and we certainly support our student meals. As we look at implementation for next year, our co-presenters before us identified best practice. We would love, our teachers want time, and boy, they'd love guidance. We have 6 elementary schools. Each one has about 35 to 40 teachers. In a perfect world, they could each get an hour a week of support from someone in implementation. For us, that would be a new spend of just about $720,000. Our curriculum adoption for the fall and a one-time investment is going to be about $900,000. So, you know, what we'd be looking over for the next 10 years is another $8 million to do the READ Act and do it well. None of that is funded currently. So I'm talking to you as a finance committee to say, where are our priorities? Where do we think we need to spend the most money in a finite resource time? We will do exactly what you ask us to do with the resource you give us. Right now, there's very little resource to do best practice in this area, and I'd ask you to consider that. The last piece I'd tell you is our board approved a $5 million cut. We raised class size. We cut resources to support students in paras. We cut resources to support students in literacy incentive aid. Our next 5 years, we're looking at an $18 million additional cut. So I think we'll have the ideas and the training, but I don't think we'll have the capacity to see the results that I would love the READ Act to support. So I share that, and I apologize, I have a 10 o'clock podcast. I really wanted to stay long enough just to share the numbers. The good news is Dr. Ledoux is a very talented leader in literacy, and she'll be able to answer every question perfectly. Thank you, Senator, I apologize.
Ms. Ledoux.
Yes, thank you, Chair Kunish, members of the committee. I'm going to highlight the implementation of the READ Act in the Minnetonka schools. So in Minnetonka schools, 440 staff, making up nearly all of our Phase 1 teachers and all Phase 2 teachers who are elementary grade 4 and 5 classroom teachers, have completed the Elementary Reading Academy through the Consortium on Reaching Excellence in Education, or CORE, which is a state-approved provider. The only group of Phase 1 teachers in our district who have not yet completed the training are secondary teachers of English learners. Unfortunately, they were not initially included or listed as Phase 1 participants, but were added to that group during the last legislative session, which was midway through our training process. So we'll be working to scoop up that small group of educators over the coming year. In Minnetonka, this professional learning was all offered in person in alignment with what we know about best practices for adult learning. We were grateful for the Department of Education's support of this approach. Our teachers participated in 10 grade level or job-alike cohorts that were inclusive of both our English program classroom teachers as well as our immersion program classroom teachers. So if you taught 3rd grade, regardless of the program in Minnetonka, you were in a cohort together. Each of these cohorts were also assigned a principal to support them. In many cases, it was a principal and an AP or an administrator who is in charge of early childhood or special education. Our professional learning sessions began in January of 2024, and we completed the final session this past January. Training was provided over 5 full days, and was fully job embedded on days that teachers were already scheduled to work. Over the coming weeks, our teachers will demonstrate their learning and application in order to complete their certification and earn the stipend that Superintendent Law spoke of. Our teachers and administrators were highly engaged throughout these sessions, and we received just extremely positive feedback both on the process, the format, and the content that was included. We're eagerly anticipating Phase 2 training and are optimistic that this will include all secondary or content area teachers as teachers of reading, because we know the focus on disciplinary literacy or training teachers to help kids develop skills and strategies specific to reading and writing in their content area is essential to setting our students up for success. And we're also very appreciative of the plan to support our paraprofessionals with training as well. In our district, FastBridge is being used to screen students in grades K through 5 3 times per year. This was our district tool that had been adopted to meet earlier dyslexia legislation prior to the READ Act. Although we have made some minor adjustments in how that's being implemented, both in our grade 1 or with our grade 1 students, as well as ensuring that all students, regardless of their progress in K-5, are being consistently screened. Following each assessment window, we have been providing each grade level teacher team structured time to provide guidance and support in both analyzing that student data and then assisting them with planning appropriate instructional responses. And this is a shift in practice and was not a part of our practice prior to the READ Act legislation. We're optimistic that an assessment plan will be coming that is specific to and in support of students who participate in our immersion programs. And we're hopeful and requesting that this will include options to complete ongoing screening in the target or partner language, that language of instruction, for students who, upon entering kindergarten, are on track in English, so that, as our previous speaker mentioned, we can support that important instructional time and still provide safety nets to catch students who might have language acquisition challenges or needs. We're also eagerly awaiting approval of assessment tools and intervention resources for our secondary students. Currently, targeted teacher teams are piloting state-identified, highly aligned foundational curriculum resources. And although we tested a unit of one of the approved knowledge building resources, we found that that did not best meet our needs. So we have moved to a more condensed, newer version, also being put out by an approved provider to focus on those knowledge building skills and to make sure that we have a comprehensive approach to literacy district-wide. This is being done as a part of our English language arts curriculum review process as we prepare to implement the new state standards. The superintendent and I have had opportunities to observe several lessons in pilot classrooms where teachers are bringing together resources and the training that they're receiving, and we're finding that both teachers and students are very positive about the learning that is happening, and the skills and the knowledge that our students are demonstrating during these lessons is truly impressive. It will be important for us to have new curricular resources in place in every classroom to start next school year, as our teachers have expressed urgency and have communicated the importance of this adoption to really be able to fully implement the exceptional training they had through CORE. It's also important to note that this implementation, as Superintendent Law mentioned, will require new levels of ongoing coaching and support for each of our teachers in their classrooms during the process. As a high-performing district, we are so excited about this statewide focus on literacy, and through this work are really looking forward to seeing tangibly the significant impact that this work is going to have on the outcomes of our students in the area of literacy. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As I'm trying to understand, every district has like a different need around curriculum. What is your, like, let's say we hadn't done the READ Act and you were using the curriculum, and then at some point there's like a natural curriculum shift, change. What is that cycle for you all?
Yep. We have a curriculum review process that actually follows state standard adoption. While we're continuously monitoring and making adjustments, it's when there are new state standards that we do a deep dive and invest a couple of years really going through a comprehensive process.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Morgan. If you would like to introduce yourself, and you may begin.
Thank you. My name is Gina Morgan. I am the interim superintendent in Spring Grove, Minnesota. Spring Grove is a small rural district. We have 371 students in one building, pre-K through 12. And I believe I was invited here today to talk about our story of success. Our small school was chosen to be part of the pilot after an MTSS grant. And so we had groups of teachers that started the letters training in 2021, and we've continued to run small cohorts of teachers and started more cohorts this year. And so we've been getting to live the READ Act before the READ Act started and then as it has been implemented. So I just wanted to share our story of success. I have gotten to be in the classrooms as both our teachers and our students have had a new knowledge in both the science of reading, but also the art of education, because our teachers have answers which spark curiosities that wouldn't have been there before this training started. They're talking about where words come from, the roots of words. The kids are asking why they need to know those things. How do they apply that over long term? And so it's not just one piece of learning, but a pattern of learning that we're seeing really change the way both our educators and our students and our families are approaching literacy and talking about literacy. And I happen to be a mom with an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old in our school. And as I was getting ready for today and reading with my son who's in 2nd grade last night, I was thinking about what I've learned and what I get to watch for as I watch him decode and apply what he's learning and what I'm seeing our teachers send home to help me to be a better mom and to better help him to learn about literacy. Our team started our journey towards structured literacy when before the READ Act was passed. It allowed our school, the READ Act has allowed our school, as well as every other school in Minnesota, to reap the benefits of using screeners, diagnostic assessments, and really looking at our intervention, our instruction, and our curriculum together as a state so that we can lean on one another and know that the steps we're taking are going to be what's best for our students. I have appreciated the level of research that goes into the decision-making. As a curriculum director in a smaller district, I have appreciated that there's research and rubrics and other pieces of information that we can use to make really strong decisions when our teams are smaller. I've also recognized that the implementation of high-quality literacy instruction helps all the layers of our reading instruction to improve in our district. We focused on professional development, curriculum, assessment, leadership, and also our MTSS process and ensuring that all of our students are getting the support they need. Specifically in Spring Grove, we have seen the most growth in our student data in our primary grades, where the majority of our staff are now completely letters trained. We've updated our resources, and we do continue to refine our instructional practice. Before letters, our typical and aggressive growth in literacy achievement data grew from about 5 to 10% from the fall to the spring. Since completing the letters training, we consistently experience a 10 25% typical or aggressive growth for our students. This means that 5 to 10% more students are making larger growth gains every year in our primary grades. We do recognize that there is still work to be done in our district to reflect the literacy achievement for all students. As our third cohort of teachers gets started this year, that is our upper elementary, but we too hope that all staff are trained in literacy. All of our secondary teachers need to know how to teach literacy within their discipline area so that we can ensure all of our students are having the same growth as that we are seeing in our primary grades. And then another aspect that we really want to focus on is continuing to partner with our families and communities around learning. I'm very interested in thinking about how do we bring our parents in to work with our teachers around literacy instruction to know how to support our children over time. So mostly I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you for supporting our journey to implement structured literacy. This has been a curious learning experience within our school where we've had an amazing team of educators, students, and families who come together and are willing to adjust their teaching practices based on the most current research. We greatly appreciate the funding, but also the clarity and direction and the support the state of Minnesota has provided us as we have implemented the READ Act requirements. The work we are all doing together will ensure literacy achievement will continue to improve for all students. We ask that you continue to fund the READ Act into the future until every student is experiencing literacy success so that we can help our children to live their purpose and contribute to the world. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a lovely message at the end. I do have a question. You were an early adapter, and it obviously was very successful. You were very thoughtful and methodical in instituting the letters, learning, and read, and now the READ Act. Can you tell me if it has influenced other curricular areas? Have teachers, have instructional administrators kind of used some of the thought process? You know, when you talk about decoding, it's not just decoding words and letters, but how that might apply to other curricular areas, or even just like a philosophical way of approaching education.
Well, what I would see is the literacy progressions are something that lasts multiple grades, and students are allowed time and extra support to move through the progressions. And so we sometimes have had quite hard stops in our educational system, like you need to be at a certain place at a certain grade, but a progression teaches or speaks to the growth of a student over time, both helping us to give that student time, but also give additional support if they're not moving through the progression in a way that that is meeting the timing that we hope. Progressions also speak into science and math and other areas of instruction. And so I would say we are all communicating differently as a school. For instance, our special education teachers now write IEP goals that are specific to the progressions of literacy. We used to write our goals more based around maybe a FastBridge test score or a fluency in general, but we have become much more specific because all of our staff can communicate around the diagnostic assessment data, and it allows us to speak with much more specificity, both with our parents and within our teams. So we know that we can help that student to grow in those small steps forward versus the really large statements like I want their fluency to be better. That's a multi-year approach, and now we can get very specific in how we communicate around educational goals.
Thank you all for coming in today and sharing your unique viewpoints. Our last speaker today is going to be, I'm sorry, what is it? Michelle Sandler, she is the Teacher Education Specialist for the Professional Learning and Standards Board, PELSB. They're going to join, she's going to be joined by Dr. Yelena Bailey, and they are remote. So if you would be so kind as to introduce yourself, and then you may begin.
Good morning. My name is Michelle Sandler, and I am a teacher education specialist at the Professional Educator Licensing and Standards Board, or PELSB. And I'm not sure if Dr. Bailey also wants to introduce herself. But thank you for having me virtually to present. I'm here to provide a summary about the reading audit report that you received. And so I'll go over each of the 4 parts and then talk about next steps, and then I'd be happy to answer any questions that any of you have. So the first section that you wanted PELSB to report on is our current reading standards for teachers for elementary, early childhood, and special education. The standards for these 3 areas are the same, and they were adopted following the 2009 statutory changes to reading, and they were adopted in 2010 for early childhood and elementary education, and then 2013 for special education. Again, the same standards. And at that time that standards were adopted, programs submitted evidence of alignment to these new standards. And then as far as alignment of the standards to the READ Act and statutory requirements, in the fall of 2022, there was a PELSB work group that was made up of some individuals from the Department of Education and some reading faculty members who found that our standards had strong alignment to the 5 components of reading and what was needed in order to teach reading. They did make a couple of recommendations of improvements that could be made to the standards that I'll discuss later, and that they're addressed in the next steps section of the report. For the crosswalk, there was support from someone from the Department of Education and a reading teacher educator to show that there is alignment of the standards to the 5 components of reading, to explicit instruction, structured literacy, to MTSS, and we also had national experts look at these standards, and overall lots of really positive feedback, and again, for the pieces that are missing or that could be stronger, we'll see those play out into the next steps. So the next section of the report discusses the process component. And the process of this reading audit is first to have a high-level reading audit to see where additional review is needed. And this audit was done of syllabi. And the PELSB audit requires more information that than what you would typically find in a syllabus. So reviewers needed quite a bit of information about assessments and reading opportunities to verify that each one of the individual reading standards was met. So most, jumping ahead a little bit, most programs did need the deeper level review, but the intent was to verify compliance. So it's not a ABC type of grade, it's is there alignment to the standards or not? So at the first part, it was a high level view of is there alignment, and where there wasn't sufficient evidence, or where there was evidence of or contradictory evidence, or it was insufficient, it went to standards level review. And at this point, we are in the 3rd year of the process, so most programs have gone through at least the high-level review and are in that standard level review process where they're providing learning opportunity or providing more information in their syllabi about learning opportunities and assessments to verify that standards are being met. And then Regarding results, again, it's about whether they've yet been able to demonstrate that there is alignment. These programs have demonstrated that there's alignment to the standards. And we see that a little over half have demonstrated compliance. And the highest proportion of special education programs have demonstrated compliance. The board has been able to approve programs that have passed the audit process. So if it's passed, the board has granted approval. Where it hasn't, the board has requested additional information through interim reports and in some cases through probation. It is worth noting that a few of the programs that were on probation have already moved to continuing approval by demonstrating that standards were met. And then finally, the next steps section is in that there are plans to verify continued compliance and to really look at outcomes of the programs. And with this next steps, there's a rubric that's currently being created that's composed of teacher educators from around the state and also including K-12 representatives. And this group is seeking feedback from national experts. And there's an ability to pilot. And with this rubric, there's also areas where the weaknesses that were found in that 2022 work group are being addressed, namely models of reading acquisition and emphasis on application of the reading standards. So I would be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Thanks so much, Ms. Sandler, for your information. I have a question. If you found an organization or a group not in compliance, what were the barriers or what were the reasons that they were not at the level that was expected to be?
Thank you. That is a great question. There's a variety of reasons that programs might not be in compliance. Something that I mentioned is what PELSB expects from syllabi is beyond what would be in a typical syllabus. Oftentimes there were references, especially in the 2023-2024 pieces, there were references to online platforms and information in online platforms, and our reviewers didn't have access to those online platforms, so couldn't verify that there were sufficient learning opportunities and assessments from something that they weren't able to access. So that was a challenge. There were several programs that had evidence of contradictory practices, 3Qing, and there were times where there just wasn't enough information. So whether it be online platforms or otherwise, there wasn't the ability to make that determination. So through this process, the idea is that programs are able to demonstrate that they are meeting the standards by having more and more opportunities to demonstrate that they are met. Thank you.
Anyone else with a question? No. Oh, Senator Eric.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think one of the things that we've heard repeatedly from our schools is their concern that they're getting all of their current teachers trained, but worried that they're going to be bringing new teachers in that do not have this training. Can you tell us with what certainty do you have that through your looking at all these different programs that the teachers that are coming out of college are going to have this training so that our schools don't have to worry about continuing this and that we don't have to worry about continuing to fund them to make sure that they can be brought up to speed when going back to 2009, these requirements were put in state statute that we should be attaining these levels?
Ms. Sandler, would you like to respond, or Dr. Bailey?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I'd be happy to respond to that. It's an excellent question and one we've received from several stakeholders. So one thing I'll note is that, as you've seen, it's a pretty rigorous process, and the standards that we have for reading are actually more in depth and nuanced than a lot of what is being done through the district training. So these teachers are coming out with a greater preparation than necessarily what would come out of the district training that's a part of the READ Act. So we feel very confident in that regard. And as Ms. Sandler has kind of spoken to, most of the issues are about them demonstrating it, not that the work isn't being done. One thing we have heard from stakeholders that we're working on right now, I met last week with representatives from MACD, the Minnesota Association of Colleges for Teacher Education, and then MASA, to discuss a convening and bringing in our colleagues from MDE to look at how we can bridge that gap and help districts then be able to demonstrate and know that those future teachers are well prepared for the next phases after the READ Act in these first few years has been implemented. So that's something we're working on right now. We're planning to convene some stakeholders and come up with guidance for districts in the next couple of months.
Thank you. Follow-up? Nope. Thank you. Senator McQuaid.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to also answer part of this question too, is the purpose of the READ Act was, yes, to get, teachers trained right now, but it is to set up a statewide literacy support system. So we have the regional centers, we have literacy leads at districts, and it is to provide that ongoing support. And so we have trained facilitators that will be, up and running in districts too. And so this isn't like if folks took letters in 2009, letters is different today. We are continuing to get more knowledge on how brains work and how literacy is best taught. And so as those things develop, there will be kind of a self-sustaining system within a district and within the regional centers and at the state to be sure that from our paras to our educators to our volunteers that there's ongoing training there. And so I do want folks to know that that's part of what this system's set up and will continue to do.
All right. Any more questions or comments? Well, thank you both so much for sharing that. There's a lot of information in that packet, and I hope that our members will take some time to review that. And if you do have any questions, I'm sure Dr. Bailey would be happy to respond to that. So we're done for today. Tomorrow we're going to meet again and have updates on the Universal School Meal Program. We will not be meeting on Thursday. And with that, this meeting is adjourned.